So if we get ourselves started, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. First and foremost, great to see everyone coming along and having a real sort of interest in the conversation. Obviously, all of us in our sort of day-to-day roles are coming under a little bit of pressure, if you like, just trying to sort things out, resolve things as this continues to move. None of us have ever been here before, so it's all a learning curve for each and every one of us. So the more input we can have, we're very much here for. First and foremost, just like to obviously again say a thank you to our corporate partners and our partners of ARC360. You know, we're meant to run physical events, if you like, quarterly. Obviously, last week our event was put paid in terms of where we were, so we ran our first webinar, and again, feedback has been really positive in terms of keeping that going on a weekly basis. So we are very much keen to do that, and along with the support of our partners, we have the ability to do that. So thank you very much to all those organisations. Again, I'd just like to kind of issue a little bit of a disclaimer when we get to these kind of things, because as I say, we are in uncharted territory, and it is just moving by the minute, this whole situation. So we put a little bit of a disclaimer up. Again, we'll read it for those who are just dialed in on the phone. So the views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributor and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee, or other group or individual. And I think, the reason I do that, again, is just to give these guys a little bit of protection. As I say, it's just moving quickly at the moment, so things are rapidly developing. Obviously, we'd love you to join in, and again, as I say, use the Q&A, use the chat, and hopefully we'll pick up on some of those comments and bits and pieces as we go. So, coming back to our fine but again, for those who don't necessarily know you, if you could just give us a little bit of an insight into your day-to-day role pre-pandemic, and then kind of what does a typical day look like as of this week?
Let me go first.
Over to you, Chris.
I'm
Yep.
Chris Weeks from the National Body Repair Association. I'm director of the association, here really just to look after the interests of our members. Which is normally a bit more straightforward, actually. Looking after their day-to-day issues that crop up. But obviously, in the last couple of weeks, it has changed. We've very much sort of tuned into becoming a way of translating the information that's coming through from the government and all the advice that's coming through, trying to make it easily accessible and understandable for our members. So we've turned into a bit of an advice line, really, and providing guidance for our members, but also speaking out on behalf of the industry to give the view of the industry to anyone that needs to listen to it. So yeah, it's been we've been absolutely flat out, really, over the last couple of weeks. It's probably the busiest time we've ever had, certainly the time I've been here.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. And Richard Steer.
Hi folks, Richard Steer, I Chief Exec of Steer Automotive Group, been in this role for about 19, 20 months now since I moved away from LKQ and the Euro Car Parts guys. Basically, normal days, obviously running the business, 9 sites, 230 odd people, 25 million turnovers, headline numbers, and that's just normal operating activities. This week is, in a funny kind of way, actually, it's been a little bit strange because what I found is that communications have dramatically increased, which is for the good, with employees, colleagues, with other people in the industry, clients, and that's been quite refreshing. And actually, I hope to continue that once we go to the other side of that as well. So that's been a lot about keeping people updated with what we're doing. Personally, been out and visited every single one of our sites and seen every one of our employees, looked them all in the eye, all my colleagues, and spoke to them about where we're up to at the minute, making sure that they know they're not in this alone. and that we're all in this together. I hasten to add that was before Monday evening, when obviously Boris kind of changed the rules a little bit. But yeah, basically it's very much just trying to manage a very, very fluid situation.
Thank you very much, Richard. And Greg, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Greg Cole, UK Claims Director at IOI. So that entails 3 main lines of business. We've got our Insure the Box telematics proposition. We also do Toyota and Lexus's insurance schemes. And then most recently, we've taken on the renewal rights of what was Amlin's commercial fleet business. I've been in this role 2.5 months. So I think with the addition of the fleet business and then this situation, I don't think I've had the pleasure of a typical day as of yet, or will do for the foreseeable. But yeah, that's me at the moment.
Okay, great stuff. Well, thank you very much, guys, and you know, really appreciate you giving up your time this afternoon just to have a bit of a chat and help everyone out within the industry, really, because I think everyone is kind of, you know, in that muddled ground. As I say, nobody's been here before. Nobody's got the answers right now, but what we can certainly do is by sharing our insight and knowledge is assist everyone. Anyone who's just joined us, again, join in on the Q&A and the chat, please do. And again, you know, the most important thing here is everyone's health. You know, there's no two ways about that. We're talking about our industry, but you know, again, in the sort of realms of things, you know, people's health is the utmost important. So let's just set that sort of straight from the outset. So in terms of Richard, and I'll come to you on this, what have you been doing within your own business then, in terms of planning? Obviously, Monday night, things changed in terms of the country went into effective lockdown. So yeah, the last 2 days, I imagine, have been a busy time.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, you know, there's some obvious things we'd already had in play. The social distancing hadn't changed. You know, the hygiene rules and regs hadn't changed. We'd introduced all that week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So fundamentally, nothing was changed. As Boris was finishing his speech, before he even finished it, I'd emailed every single one of our colleagues on a massive group email, and that was literally everybody, telling them that we were effectively business as usual, going to be operating the following process tomorrow, reinforcing some of the social distancing pieces. And also just, you know, kind of give them some indication of what the role we were playing in keeping the country moving, and the essential element that was. We did work for NHS, we did work for police, but also, you know, the public as well, in terms of their ability to move around. You know, is it care workers, is it doctors, nurses, all of the obvious stuff, and our job as well is to, you know, provide a service within that. So we kind of really focused on that. The biggest challenge really for us has unquestionably been around parts and the fairly drastic change that Monday night brought with regards to the following day, when I probably had 40 parts sites closing the following morning with no notice. Most of them were gone within 5 or 6 hours of the emails coming out, and that meant they fundamentally changed the dynamic under which we were facing. So claims had already been dropping at a fair rate. It's fair to say we're probably 60% down in terms of claims, and I expect that to accelerate even further as we're seeing the volumes drop off. And that hasn't really been mitigated by any work being sent in, extra work being sent in from repairers who've already closed in the local areas. So from that perspective, one isn't necessarily counting. It might be masking it slightly, but I still think it's a fair indication of the steepness of the decline, and we expect that to continue as the measures bite to an even greater degree. Yeah,
okay. And Greg, from your perspective, in terms of starting within the business itself, the kind of measures that you guys have taken or are now taking?
Yeah, so I guess our big focus has been, as I imagine it has for everyone really, one, maintaining a service for customers, and then two, being there and supporting our people. So our big challenge is getting our people working from home, particularly our customer-facing people. So a huge effort across our business to make that happen. Never been done before, but 95% plus now of our claims people are working from home. They're taking calls, they're servicing customers, which is great. But it's also, I guess, recognising what a challenging and unnerving time this is for our people as well. I think, you know, some good work again, really good work, even ahead of the government announcements, putting support packages primarily financially for our people. But I think a big focus as well on just keeping people connected. Now we are quite isolated, virtual communities and so on. I think that's going to be really important as the days and weeks progress.
Yeah, definitely. And Richard obviously referred to claims volumes.
Yep.
Are you guys, where are you in terms of visibility of that? Are we seeing significant numbers, as Richard sort of indicated?
We are, yes. I think yesterday we saw about a 70% reduction versus what we'd expect. And again, we've got that backed up by mileage data that we get from our telematics devices and the alerts that they generate. And we're expecting that's probably going to decrease a little bit more today as well.
Right. Okay. Wow. Now, Richard, you referenced, in terms of the business, you are, still operational or can still operate. The limiting factor is starting to be, if you like, supply chain. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I mean, it's a simple fact. Our preferred route is to repair and replace. More movement towards that. We've obviously trying to encourage where we can repair to obviously reduce the reliance on the supply chain, more control in house. Obviously, greater use of total loss avoidance schemes, but typically total loss normally means more parts are required because the cars are heavier hit. So that's a bit of a balance trying to find between those two. And also as well, just kind of leveraging some of our size and scale in the area in which we operate to try and pull parts in from wherever we can. That, of course, means in some instances we're trading with people we haven't historically traded with, and therefore, obviously, that has an impact in terms of discounts and terms, credit terms. We'd already seen a step change in dealers and their application of credit rules into the business over the last few weeks anyway, and we kind of felt there was a bit of a change themselves and we were having much more pressure to pay earlier. In fact, we even had somebody even a week or so ago actually asked us to pay something on account, which is unheard of. But as I say, we didn't, and I just said we'll probably take our business elsewhere. But we're suffering as far as that's concerned. And then really we need more directions and guidance from insurers, accident management partners to let us know in terms of what they're going to allow or not allow as far as the sourcing of alternatives, whatever they might be. What's the view around green? What's the view around alternative? What's the discretionary rules that we can apply to use of those kind of products in addition to OE? We're going to buy OE wherever we can buy OE, but obviously we need to basically pull parts in from where we can to get cars out the door. Otherwise, we are faced with several hundred, and I mean that, several hundred vehicles being locked on site if we cannot operate.
Mm-hmm. And your view on the current situation in terms of the supply chain, Greg, and obviously what Richard's just kind of indicated, what's going on at that level?
Yeah, I imagine a lot of us are kind of dusting off our Brexit contingency plans from last year, and obviously Chris and insurers did some good work last year focusing on maintaining cash flow. So again, what Richard says there, we need to be pragmatic and sensible, keep that cash flowing where we can. I think the challenge is the kind of work in progress element, and how we respond to inevitable decline in service, albeit claims will drop off as well. I don't have all the answers to that in terms of how do we deal with some of these immobile vehicles where we've got nowhere to take them, for example, or in-flight repairs that can't be completed. I think we've just got to be sensible and maintain a dialogue with our supply chain to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, apologies, we seem to have lost Mr. Weeks somewhere along the lines, but hopefully he'll be joining us at some stage. So we'll obviously get around to that. Richard, got a question come in. What three things could be done to assist the repairers during these times? You've obviously already sort of pointed towards a fair few, but are there any, specifically three things that you can think of?
Speed of transaction, and that is either speed of authorization, improving that, some opportunity to move towards self-auth, so we just basically make the flow a bit quicker, although I'm very conscious that engineering departments are naturally quieter because claims are down, so in theory we should be able to get those things auth even quicker than they were, supplementaries, but also as well, and what is really critical, is being allowed to get our finished jobs authorized and boxed off and invoiced, because for accident managers that's lifeblood for them as well, and we need to make sure get those invoices raised and passed through to their insurer clients. So that'd be the first thing. Obviously I've talked about parts and some more direction and guidance around parts. is a big challenge, and that means what parts we can use and what environment we can use them within, and obviously mobility costs are one of the single biggest concerns we've got. I mean, I can't tell you, we've got a hybrid mobility solution, and it frightens me because it's the biggest single variable cost we have. And of course, whilst I can send people home and close sites, and that has reduced the operating cost of the site, if I've got 150 cars in enterprise rent cars, then obviously that is a mobility cost that I've got sat out there that the clock is ticking on. So we desperately need help on that, because if we're shut out here for 4 or 5 weeks, there isn't necessarily government incentive or support around that particular area, and yet it's through no fault of our own we can't get the cars back. Ironically, of course, a lot of these people aren't going to need their cars as well. So it's support from the insurers and accident managers to make sure that when we have a conversation and dialogue with those clients, we actually are able to go and pick those cars up and bring them back for people who actually genuinely do need them. So that would be the other area. Payments, speed of payments, obviously clearly as an invoice is raised, cash is going to be king within this process. Let's get the invoices paid and back to us as soon as possible. And keep the lines of communication open. It's never been more important to make sure that we're in full dialogue with all client partners to make sure they're understanding exactly what our position is, because it is completely fluid and changing. And decisions we're making today will be different decisions tomorrow based on the information we've got to hand. As claims volumes continue to drop, we'll go from what we would call a flip to a flop situation, whereby there'll be a window here, effectively where we'll be break even, and then we're moving into loss as the claims become uneconomic for us to stay open and repair cars. That said, we will not be shutting our doors. Unless I'm instructed to by the government, we will not be shutting our doors. We might have a different type of service provided, but we will not be shutting our doors, and we'll have a full range of services available to all of our clients. So that is absolutely categoric.
Okay, great stuff, Richard. And Chris has joined us. You're back in action, Chris. Good to see you.
So I completely lost my internet then for some reason. Don't know why. All the kids went running around in a blind panic.
So we've just been obviously just discussing in terms of what we're currently seeing in the industry. What's changing, a little bit what we touched upon earlier in terms of Richard's thoughts, mobility, as he described it, a flip to flop scenario, where you're kind of in that position where it's all okay to all of a sudden it's not okay. From your perspective, again, you're obviously talking to a lot of repairers out there. Richard's one of the bigger guys obviously within the industry. What's the feel amongst others?
Yeah, so, I mean, I didn't really get to hear what Richard said, unfortunately. But, I mean, since the last call that we had, obviously, we've had the government aid package that came out Friday. So, we were looking at an absolutely catastrophic position or situation before. There seemed to be no lifeline for body shops whatsoever. But obviously, the government have announced their measures, albeit they're not really fully in place yet. Some of them haven't even been passed, from what I understand. Even the furlough, we believe, may not be available until the end of April. But obviously that's happened, and then we had Boris make his announcements on Monday, which changed the world again, didn't it? So, it tightened up the way the country's operating. So all the conversations I've been having with the body shops, reasonable amount of work in progress that people are still working through. People working furiously to try and get jobs done where they've got the parts, to get the cars to the customers, and to get some cash in, of course. As I think I heard the end of Richard say, cash is king. So the body shops are really trying to get hold of as much as they can at the moment. But the volumes are down, and the focus has moved now from low volumes and staff not turning up to parts interruptions, which I'm sure you've already heard. It's evaporating overnight, and those that aren't closed, it looks like more and more of them will be getting ready to close by Friday. I've spoken to Sue Robinson, who heads up the National Franchise Dealer Association. She's in constant contact with the chief execs of all of the big dealerships and dealership groups. And the reality of it is, new car sales have pretty much evaporated. So they have been looking at their operations as a whole and pretty much shut down things completely. trying to hibernate. So, you know, parts supply has been caught in the crossfire of that, unfortunately, and is increasingly becoming the biggest problem for the repairers. But yeah, some have closed already. Some are attempting to sort of trade through the situation and slim down as much as they can. You know, a further lockdown is possible. So, you know, it could get to the point where, as many other things have been so far, decisions are taken out of our hands. Yeah, Body Shop's very much looking at cash, what they could do right now, you know, escaping the VAT, not paying PAYE, you know, saving their corporation tax, speaking to their landlords to say, you know, can they put off the rent? You know, looking at direct debits, what can they cut out? You know, what don't they have to do? Taking advantage of the government's business rates relief for those with 51,000 or less per annum. And we are retail, by the way, as far as we can tell, although there's sort of local governments will argue that. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on, and you know what I'm seeing at the moment out there.
So just picking up on the point of the retail and garages sort of differentiation. It's a question that a few people have sort of posed in this week or over the last few days. What's your take on that then, Chris? We are retail, or does it?
Well, yeah, so retail had to close, and there was a government paper that said, with the exception of garages, which was quite a sort of a vague term, but we interpreted that to mean body shops, but they have been clearer about that. Overnight, they've updated that, and they've included repairers under garages. So it's quite clear that if you want to operate as an essential service as a body shop, then you are still able to operate.
Okay, great stuff. Now, Greg, you know, feedback obviously from your repairers, those that you deal with out there. Again, you're getting the same kind of messages. Richard already spoke about, you know, communication being very much a two-way thing. You know, are you getting much feedback from the industry, people coming to you with solutions, as well as kind of, you know, obviously the issues that are faced?
Yeah, the dialogue's been really, really strong so far. Real attempt to keep it BAU where possible. You know, getting daily updates from all of our supply chain as to measures that they've put in place. But yeah, we're hearing the similar things that Chris and Richard have mentioned, particularly around part supply today. That's obviously going to have a massive impact. Yeah, we've just got to keep that dialogue open.
Does the and again, this is probably for all three of you really, in the sense that does the sort of model of repair change temporarily? And I think, Richard, you kind of touched upon it, that, you know, are we almost in a sort of, you know, can we repair more or look at more repair operations rather than replacement temporarily? And I mean that on, you know, items that you can touch, superficial panels and parts and these kind of things, rather than anything structural, obviously. There's obviously a line that has to be drawn, but is that something that, you know, becomes a viable proposition to tide us all over?
It's talked about, but the practicality of temp repairs and the amount of vehicles you can actually apply a temp repair to is pretty few and far between. You know, the car's immobile, it's immobile for a reason. If it's mobile, then it really shouldn't be on site. So the truth of the matter is, the way we would work and operate is that car should be at home with the owner of the vehicle, and we should have the mobility, whatever it is, courtesy hire, whatever, we should have that back on site and being used to people who generally need it. So I would say, you know, people are obviously reluctant. We're getting a lot of cancellations of people, even if you could do a temp repair, they don't want to bring the car in because is that deemed to be, are they allowed that essential journey? Are they allowed that essential journey to bring the car in to get it temporarily fixed by us and then turn around and drive home? Is that really where it's at? You know, that's, you know, the honest truth of it is in most households, people have got, you know, two cars. Certainly in the rural areas where we live, a lot of the people have, where we operate, they have two cars, and therefore they can often use the other car they need to do their essential journeys, to go and get their food or whatever they need to go and do, or whatever activity they're conducting. So from my perspective, I think temp repairs, yes, to a degree. I think just generally more of a repair over replace methodology definitely helps and makes sense, and makes good sense for us to look at, and we'll continue to look at. And as I said, total loss avoidance wherever we can, and exhausting the manufacturer programs that currently exist to make sure we're saving as many cars as possible to repair as many. So there's an argument that says, why aren't you doing that before? Well, there are arguments we are. But obviously, sometimes you can look at a job and think, okay, can you repair that, or should you need to replace it? And you basically make a decision based on the information from the skilled operative and the VDA, who's obviously managing the job. So we'll do whatever we can do, but I think it's relatively limited temp repairs for the reasons I've said.
Chris, when you were disconnected, we spoke about how the Brexit contingency planning that you and the guys did last year around maintaining cash flow, and all the things that Richard just mentioned there can really help now. Mm-hmm. Are there other things that you think insurers should be doing in this space, because it is such a fast moving issue?
Well, I mean, number one, if there's anything you can do to accelerate payments, change your terms, make them as possible. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Really, cash is absolutely, vital at the moment. I think definitely take a lenient attitude towards things like mobility. So we've got lots of body shops sort of saying, look, really, we're only prepared to give out cars, when the parts are available. Not always for total losses if they start to become a little bit thin on the ground. We would certainly like insurers, accident management companies to sort of roll with the punch a little bit, set lower expectations for their customers at the moment, and expect that the body shops can't do everything that they would normally do. One thing that I did raise last week, it might have changed somewhat now due to the government aid package, but realistically, if a body shop is going to try and trade through at the moment with like 50% of the volume that they'd normally have, they've still got all of the overheads they'd normally have, maybe with the exception of some of the staff that they furloughed off. They're going to really struggle to even break even. The vast majority of them will be operating at a loss right now. And I would say, well, what could insurers do to that? We did do some calculations last week that said, you could actually double your terms to repairers in the interim, and still be far, far better off from a claims perspective because of the vastly reduced claims. I know that's not easy to do. I know that, some insurers may wish to take it as an opportunity to put it into pricing and win more business, which is what Gary Barker said last week.
Yeah, I could give a view on that, I guess, from an insurance or insurer perspective. I suppose, claims are significantly down. I gave that 70% from yesterday's stat earlier. Where that's going to end up, we don't know, and that's taken a while to probably flow through. What I would say, though, is insurance sales are down across the market. Quote activity is significantly down, as you'd expect. As you'd say, nobody's buying any cars. For us as well, no driving tests, so no new drivers joining the market, a lot less churn. And then investment returns are going to be significantly lower as they stand as well. So in all honesty, we don't know where this is going to end up, and what impact it has on an insurer as a business at the moment. Obviously, quite a lot of nervousness about that, and I don't think we could have anticipated this situation a couple of weeks ago, and probably don't know where it's going to end up in the next few weeks and months as well. But I think it's just about having that commitment to work with the likes of yourselves to do the sensible thing, because ultimately we want a sustainable supply chain at the end of all this.
Yeah, look, it's not. This isn't insurers' fault. Insurers didn't cause the coronavirus, as far as I'm aware. You can't be held responsible for it. It's just like any other business situation. You've got trading options, and if we wind the clock forward a few months, inevitably there's going to be body shops that shut down. What number that is, we haven't really done any modelling on it yet. But even if we said it was 20%, 30%, we're going to come out the back end of this with a supply and demand problem, as if we didn't have one already. And repairs are going to be in short, are going to be in high demand. It's what you do now that could, and I'd say this to all the insurers out there, what you do now could make a massive difference on the back end. If I was at an insurer right now, I'd be tempted to take a calculated risk and do something that really is a shot in the arm for the repairers that I work with, because there's a good chance that everything is going to get shut down within the next couple of weeks anyway. So it's not the biggest risk that you could ever imagine. Appreciate it's not very easy to influence, the exec of an insurance company to make decisions like that. But, it's definitely something that should be getting discussed at the very least. And if anybody does want to discuss anything like that, and they want any ideas, then, the MBRA are more than happy to help put something together.
And I think that's that's very much the ground we're in at the moment, is that having conversations that you might never have previously, even considered or entertained. And I think that's really the realms we're in. And what comes out the other end of that, who knows? But these sort of exploratory conversations are well worth having. And that's amongst all parties. It doesn't matter who's involved in this. That's kind of by the by, really. Now, Greg, we talked about repairers shutting down. I've witnessed a couple on kind of LinkedIn and some good friends of mine kind of saying, that's it for the time being. Are you noticing that from your side, and how is that kind of affecting deployment of vehicles? Is it, how kind of dynamic are we as an industry to switch on, switch off repairers?
So we, I think as of this morning, we're probably down to about 70-75%. So it's, with the volumes that we're seeing, it's manageable. In terms of then adapting as more switch off, that will cause challenges, no doubt, logistical challenges. Again, very difficult to kind of anticipate where and when that might hit.
Yeah, sure.
So we've got to be reactive.
And Richard, you sort of mentioned, obviously, at the moment, it is kind of all go within the business. But do you see in the coming weeks anything, coming days even, significantly changing in terms of how you might, look to manage things internally?
Yeah, 100%. Not least of which because we will not be able to sustain a business model that operates currently with all sites open, and it's the same for us. And it doesn't matter if it's us, could be A, B, C, D, or E. It doesn't matter. We're reflective of some of the regional groups out there because claims volume are collapsing, and we'll have to make decisions that actually fit within that. Chris is right. You ultimately we're in a position by it's whatever government incentives and initiatives are out there, it will not cover the cost of what we're going to lose in the short term, and then where the short becomes the mid. And I've said before, I think we've seen the end of whatever normal was. If normal was January, I don't think we'll ever see January again. This will reset the whole business, the whole industry, as far as I'm concerned. If 100 was the index level we're currently operating at, whether it goes down to 85, 80, or whatever it is, that's where this industry is going to ultimately reset itself. And what people need to understand, and I've worked out since I've been there, and back in the good old days when I sold paint for a living, if we sold more products, and if I sold 10 tins today, great. If I sold 12 tins tomorrow, even better. 14 tins the day after, fantastic. And keep going up there to 20, then 25. You keep growing the business. That doesn't work the way in body shops. You have a capacity that you have to manage within operating, and you can't suddenly go from repairing 20 cars a week to repairing 40 cars a week. That just doesn't work. If you're repairing 20 and you've got a site that can do 20, you might squeeze out 23, 24, you might be down to 18, but you don't go to 30, you don't go to 35. Those businesses do not operate in that way. They have quite a very tight operating sweet spot that allows efficiencies to flow through the site, that allows you to make money. If you have overcapacity situations, you run too hot on referrals, ultimately from that perspective, we will not be in a position to make money either, because the returns start to drop because the operation inefficiencies start to kick in. So the end result of all this is, if we can only repair, I don't know, let's just say 100 cars a day from our operations, we will only be able to repair 100 cars a day from our operations going forward. So someone offers us 200 cars, we can't repair 200 cars without either buying more facilities or opening new sites. But how do we open new sites given the level of financial impact that this next 2 or 3 months, 4 months, 5 months is going to cause to us in the interim? The answer is we're not. So, we're seeing a fundamental step change. And for me, this isn't actually about coronavirus. clearly there's going to be some really tragic situations that are occurring and are already occurring all over the globe. And there's no winners in this, it's just survivors. And the simple fact is, it's about making sure that, you know, my business is in a position to survive, but also the industry collectively is able to offer a service to our client partners going forward on the wider piece, not about Steer Automotive, but the collective piece, that everybody's in a position to be able to provide a solution to policyholders in terms of when they have an accident damage, what can we do to put them back on the road safely and economically to keep the world still turning. So it's a game-changing time, and because no one's got a crystal ball or no one's got the book on this, whoever you are, it's impacting everyone. Race, religion, colour, creed, gender is just indiscriminate in terms of who it's affecting. So I just hope that that collectively as many people survive as possible out of it in a physical sense, but also in a business sense as well, because the economic outlook for the future is a pretty grim one, whichever way you cut it.
Now, on the sort of economic outlooks side and the government packages that have obviously been coming to play, furloughing of staff. Chris, can you give us a little bit more on that side of things? There's obviously a bit of sort of, you know, nobody truly knows, I don't think, the answer. And again, Richard, you referred to it in a little catch up earlier, that you obviously had discussions amongst yourself and business colleagues and things. But is there any more clarity that you can give on that at all, Chris?
I mean, you know, I suppose the loans that are out there are in fact that they're loans. And whilst they might be sort of guaranteed for the banks that are providing them by the government, you know, you are still effectively going to be paying back money. So I think a lot of the body shops are not seeing the loans as a really credible alternative, albeit, you know, whilst the facilities aren't in place for the furlough yet, which is, you know, this piece of up to 80% of the wages to $2.5 grand. We believe that's gross, by the way. We're not entirely sure, but we believe that's gross wages, taking out tax, national insurance, pensions, and all that, which is still applicable to it. But, you know, taking a short-term interest-free loan might be an option to help pay the furlough wages in the short term, knowing full well that you're going to be able to cover that money from the government. So, believe ultimately the employer is going to recover it via a tool which isn't set up yet. You know, the BRA, the Regional Motor Associations, are meeting at 5 o'clock every day, and we're feeding back all the information to motor industry lawyers, and we are doing our best to provide really sort of simple information for the body shops on a daily basis as it changes, enabling them to understand what to do next. So we've been putting out approximately 3 communications a day so far, giving advice, loan scheme, pieces around essential worker. We put a draft letter out for helping the conversation to furlough staff yesterday. We've been holding cross-industry advisory calls as well as webinars, doing some government lobbying where necessary. So we're kind of working flat out. But the thing is, I think the government put the measures out there, very well-meaning, and you know, I think they've done a brilliant job, but they're just trying to catch up with themselves at the moment and put the detail behind it. We're watching that really closely, and as soon as we'll be sending it out, not just to our members, but to the whole industry.
Richard, you got anything more to add on that in terms of potential, you know, discussions that you'd had with business colleagues external to the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a group going with a lot of pals who are in business owners, not in any way, shape or form to do with automotive, and we're sharing comms around it. You know, Chris has already alluded to the simple fact is the government portal is not set up for job retention scheme. We're talking about getting money at the end of April. That's 2 payrolls for me. 2 payrolls for me, potentially, if we can't operate from next week, I'm not actually creating invoices. If you're invoice discounting and factoring, that's going to have an even bigger impact because ultimately the cash dries up immediately. Therefore, they might not even survive effectively to see the second payday at the end of that period. So the business interruption loan, the banks aren't totally aware what that even looks like or where they're going to go and get it or who can apply for it. I mean, we've got some basic thresholds around up to 45 million turnover, which include 99% of all repairers. and a sort of certain size up to £5 million loan, which should cover the payroll and the operating costs of most businesses within our industry. But as Chris already alluded to, that is a business interruption loan. It's interest free, but you've still ultimately got to pay it back. Interest free, government back for 12 months. You've still got to pay it back with what? I mean, the reality is you need to make money to repay those monies back. So job retention scheme is quite critical, but as I said, not in place, and ultimately only happens when you furlough staff out. So you've got to have a difficult conversation with your staff to say, you're now being sent home. You cannot do anything else. You cannot do any work within the business at all. You cannot work anywhere else either. And you need to go home and you're technically on 80% of the pay up to a maximum of £30,000, £2,500 a month. So business rates, that's not been applied yet, and we should wait for information to come out from the councils. They're having to wing it. This is beyond anyone's wildest dreams. You wouldn't believe if it's a film script, you wouldn't believe it as what happened, the speed it's happened at. So they are on the back foot playing catch up as far as everything's concerned. And it obviously affects, as I said, every single industry, every single business is impacted some way, shape or form. So, I do feel for them in that respect. Obviously, we want to do whatever we can do to make sure. Corp tax is an interesting one, but again, you've got to be making money to pay corp tax, and obviously PAY the same. So you can apply for some holidays around those sorts of elements as well. And defer them as far as costs are concerned. But most of this stuff's going to have to be paid back. It's not going to be going anywhere. It's just ultimately stalling something for future. And that's the biggest concern any repairer would have when you've got a industry that typically has always been very hand to mouth as far as trading is concerned. Invoice raised, cash comes in, you then use that and you keep the money go around really, really quickly. People are not sat on big cash reserves, very few are big cash reserves industry. So the fragility of it is, it is really, really, it's like a big deck of cards and a big gust of wind, which this is, could fundamentally change the process going forward. So the risk managers at the insurers, AXA managers must be having sleepless nights any more than we are because of, as much as we are rather, because of what they're faced with as far as what the supply chain is going to look like post Armageddon.
Yeah. Again, Greg, kind of moving that one onto you really. Where you sit in the industry and kind of what you see, what are the conversations taking place in-house? Are we breaking things down currently into short, medium, long-term strategies? Is it just completely all hands on deck at the moment? Really, where does it sit from where you're seeing things?
Yeah, it's largely the latter. All hands on deck to get that service continuing, and then I think it's kind of scenario based planning in terms of where this could go, and where we can help. And Richard's mentioned a few things there in terms of managing customer expectations and so on. Keeping the instructions going where we know there aren't parts issues, for example. But beyond that, in all honesty, we're not too sure at the moment. I think that's where we need to work with the supply chain to see where this is all going. Obviously, it's become clear, I think, from this call that the details on things like the government package and furlough and so on isn't particularly nailed down yet, and understandably so. I think as those details become clearer, that's where we probably need to come together and then see where does that leave the supply chain.
Yeah, that's great.
Mark, I know you can't see the questions, but one was put up by Mark Ball, and I think it's a great suggestion actually. He's kind of said a top of the head suggestion: if changing insurer terms would prove difficult in the medium to long term, could there be a virus payment, a bit like a levy? And I idea at the moment actually, if you sort of win friends' influence for the long term, I'd definitely be putting that up in my business. Something else that if we forget about the fact we're all different factions at the moment, we're all part of the same industry. A few people have been saying what we doing as an industry as a whole for the key workers and people at the moment. Sort of industries have come up with something that they've been able to do, that shows sort of an act of generosity and kindness to the people that are working so hard at the moment. And I don't think we've really done much as an industry. So for those sort of key workers out there, the doctors, nurses, teachers, health workers and all, I think it would be absolutely great if we, should they have an accident, Right now, I think it would be absolutely great if we could do something to help them with their excess. You know, and I don't know how much repairers would be prepared to contribute, and I don't know whether insurers would make the effort to, you know, pay a big proportion of it at the moment. But, you know, I think it would be just a fantastic gesture for our industry if we get something like that organised. You know, I'd be interested to hear everybody's views on that.
So I've certainly seen some good stuff out there, Chris. I've not obviously seen on the excess side of things, but there's certainly repairers out there prioritising NHS workers. I know there's various loan schemes of courtesy vehicles. Some shops offering up their courtesy vehicles for NHS workers. Enterprise are doing a big scheme themselves. So yeah, there's definitely some great stuff out there going on. You're absolutely right. But yeah, can the industry do more? Yeah, I think it's a great question.
I think, you know, the press are really, you know, looking out for good news stories of generosity, and I think it could be an incredible PR move. You know, if somebody was to take the first step, and I think everyone else would follow very quickly. But yeah, just wanted to mention that because one of our members raised it, and I thought it was such a good idea.
All right, great stuff. Now, we're kind of nearing the end of the call. There are various questions, and we will focus on getting through those as much as we possibly can. But you know, are there, you know, it seems like the wrong thing to say, and it seems like the wrong thing to think about right now. But the kind of, you know, opportunities, stroke positives that could come from all this. In terms of the relationship. And again, Richard, you know, I think you already kind of alluded to it in the sense that you've probably spoken to more people in the last week, communicated with more supply chain and things than perhaps, you know, you have done for a while. But, you know, is that one of the things that we can really take away from all this, and as we move, you know, further into it, undoubtedly?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, you know, communication's always been a key part of any relationship. So making sure we have that in play and have, but obviously the conversations are really drilled around specific challenges that we have now. And heaven help us. I mean, God, I'm long gone. By the time anyone's ever facing what we're faced with now, you know, it's war without the bombs and bullets. So from our perspective, yeah, communication absolutely essential out the back of it. You kind of want to get to know to some degrees who your partners are. Truth of the matter is, if we can repair, you know, 100 cars a day going forward, and we're lucky enough to be in that position to survive this and come out the other side, and we're still in a business able to trade, then those 100 cars a day will be carefully selected who we do them for. And it's your partners that you see stepping up to the plate now and helping to support us through this critical time. And it's not isolated to us. It's about individuals that are going to make their own decisions about what that looks like. But, you know, if there's an overcapacity situation going forward and we can still repair 100 cars, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out whose cars we're going to be repairing. You know, so people who've stepped up for us in their hour of need. You know, £10 when you want it is worth more than £1,000 when you don't. And we are faced with that exact position going forward. So we need that help. We need that help. You know, we are moving into a loss-making situation unquestionably because claims volumes are not there. And if we have to shut the doors of trade, we will ultimately be losing money. How long we can lose money for is just about cash management from our perspective. So from our side, yeah, that's a critical piece, and that's the only bit I implore people to step up and help us with in all those individual areas, understanding that they have business challenges as well, and we are in uncharted times. There isn't a management book about how to deal with this, you know. So, but we got plans, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're currently into just going past stage 1 into stage 2 of this process. And we'll be continuing to communicate out to our partners to make sure they're fully aware of exactly what we're doing and how we're trying to manage the customer's journey as well through this challenging time.
And Greg, you must be in a similar boat, really, learning, you know, as we go, as we all are, but learning a lot about the supply chain, a lot about your kind of partnership and things as we move into this. Yeah,
I think the last few weeks and just through today's call, that appreciation of the huge reliance and interdependency of the end-to-end supply chain. You know, potentially how vulnerable it could be if we get complacent. So yeah, I think some of the ideas that Chris suggested there were really good. I think if we can, you know, maybe via MBRA get a working party from across the industry looking at this and sharing ideas, I think that would be a really good step. As I say, our focus has largely been trying to keep going operationally. Now's the time to work really closely with the supply chain.
Chris, you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're in dialogue with absolutely anybody about. We know body shops that are trying to trade through it need a little shot in the arm at the moment. They really do, and you know, not much has come out so far. I understand the commercial and the competitive difficulties at the moment, but I'd love to see somebody step forward and do something brave at the moment. I really would. But yeah, I think on a positive note, I think more people from home, being around their families. My wife who mowed the lawn yesterday. Midweek drinking is in full effect. You know, I don't think we need to worry about snow with them at the moment. It's a bit too early, isn't it? 2:30. Give us a chance. What does it finish? Another 5. But look, I think we just need to be positive. You know, keep talking, keep sharing ideas. I think the industry is getting closer together, and we'll get through it.
Yeah, I mean, from ARC360's point of view, obviously we are, you know, these webinars are now, you know, a thing on a Wednesday 1:30. That's where we'll be. Again, we want to continue to engage with the wider industry and everyone to pool their resource. In terms of what Greg has just said, and you, Chris, you know, kind of bringing an insurer and a repairer sort of party together, smaller group, then absolutely we would, you know, be delighted to sort of, you know, try and piece that together for you, for us all, really. So yeah, if anyone's keen in engaging in that, please do just, you know, drop us a line, because these conversations need to happen. And again, I think it's one of those places that we're in right now. You know, we may be talking things that nobody would ever even consider on a normal day, if you like. So they're well worth having. Just to kind of start to round things up a little bit, we're just scanning through everything as we go, and there's obviously, you know, some specific questions out there. We'll try and focus on sort of the majority at the moment. Investment in supply chain, that's one that, Chris, you've already kind of mentioned, and perhaps you know, one we've spoken about, Greg, but you know, is that something that becomes a consideration in terms of, you know, all the elements that we've already discussed in terms of supporting the supply chain? You know, insurers now looking at that, and I don't mean just you specifically, but you know, is that a potential that we start to explore now?
Investment in the supply chain.
Yeah, sort of, you know, for long-term sustainability. I think we mentioned previously, you know, the law of unintended consequences from all of this. You know, is there a longer term, you know, sort of, we need to cast an eye longer term out of all of this, really?
Yeah, absolutely. We, you know, when we come through this, whenever that is, in a few months' time, like I said before, we need that sustainable, robust supply chain in place to service our claims. Yeah, absolutely. We need to consider that.
Right, guys, I'm very conscious we've got a couple of minutes remaining. Let's take a little kind of summary point from each of you, just to round us out for this week. And again, I really appreciate your contributions. So, Richard, you know, what would you kind of say to the industry right now?
We keep communicating. We've said that enough today, but I think you can't do enough of that at this particular juncture, because it's very, very fluid, and we need to know, you know, insurers, accident managers need to know who's open, who's doing what, you know, to be directing work and spending time directing work to sites that aren't still there. Communicating with the networks, as clear a guidance as they can give. You know, simple stuff like what parts can we use? How, you know, help us with payment and authorizations as quickly as possible. Get those through. Look at mobility costs. You have 4 or 5 key areas of which could make a fundamental difference to the. You know, I'm not putting big subsidies or handouts, whatever, but basically we do need to be in a position whereby we're going to survive that and out the other side as an industry. Because ultimately, you know, in 6 months' time, we look back on whatever this looks like then and go, wow, what an absolutely grim time that was. that's going to be a real measure of what we've actually achieved during that particular place. And all I do know is I think it'll be fundamentally different to what it is now. That's my view. So, damage limitation.
Great stuff. Thanks, Richard. Greg?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think, yeah, fluid is certainly the word, and dialogue. I think, yeah, insurers have got similar challenges, a lot of nervousness, don't know where it's going to end up. But yeah, only through things like this and what we've done today can we keep on top of it. And I'm sure we can if we do that.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Greg. And Chris?
Yeah, I just want to say I am all the repairers out there, really. What a bunch of brave, innovative, tough people they are, and going through absolute hell, probably the toughest time in their whole careers at the moment. So I just want to say a big thank you to all the repairers out there who kept going. Everybody else in the industry as well, who just keep us, pulling us all together, and to you at ARC360 for taking the lead on getting these comms out, which I think has been really useful for a lot of people. So we just keep going, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I think that probably rounds up today's conversations. Thank you very much to the three panelists, Richard, Greg and Chris. Really, really appreciate your time during these challenging times when everyone is rushing around. The input is great, and it's so interesting to gauge people's different perspectives on where the industry's at right now. Again, thank you very much to obviously everyone who's joined us. We go again next Wednesday. You'll all receive an invite from us. Get it in the calendars. If anyone particularly wants to take part, then again, drop me a line, questions beforehand. Again, we'll take all those on board. So again, once again, really appreciate everybody's time for today, and we will keep communicating. Thanks all. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye.